Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to another episode of eDiscovery After Hours. My guest this week is Chris Bojar from Barack Ferrazzano. Chris and I have been buddies for a number of years, and so it was very fun in this episode to look down and realize that about 30 minutes had gone by and I hadn't asked him a single work question yet. So mea culpa, if you come from the eDiscovery part of the show, not a lot of meat on that bone, but if you come for the After Hours part, we talk about music, we talk about sports, we talk about kids, we talk about whole host of issues, and I had a lot of fun, and I hope you will too. Our sponsor is Proteus Discovery Group. Proteus was founded by 4 former AmLaw 100 litigators who have walked many miles in the shoes of their clients. So they understand what you do with an eDiscovery work product, why it's so important. There's no outside investors. They're focused completely on supporting the client, not on financial reporting, not on over engineering, not on forcing people into MSAs. So check out proteusdiscovery.com. Thanks for tuning in.
Quick time!
You don't know how to drink, your whole generation.
Drinks on the house.
Yes, sir.
No, wait a second. Drinks are 50% off.
Right.
No, wait a second. Double the price of everything.
And I work only 16 hours a day.
A union man only works 8 hours a day.
I belong to 2 unions.
And now, eDiscovery After Hours with your host, Ryan Short.
Chris, welcome to eDiscovery After Hours, man. Cheers.
Cheers, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is mine. And with this drink choice, it is a pleasure. What are we drinking today?
So we went with the gin and soda.
Yeah, it's super good. What kind of gin are you drinking?
So this one is Bombay Sapphire. How about you? What's your gin?
You polished me off.
Perfect. The soda part is somewhat funny though. So you mind if I do just 1 minute on the soda component?
Go for it. Let's hear it.
So this is the truly the progressive commercial. You're becoming your parents. My mom drank LaCroix all the time when I was a kid, and I was always like, "Oh my God, LaCroix! Like I can't believe it." And then I joined the firm I'm at now. Vendors call it Barack Ferrazzano, but Barack Ferrazzano, I think, as we've joked about. And we had all these different flavored LaCroix, and I was like, "Man, like." And just didn't have them for a little while. And then, of course, like I had one of the Essence ones and was like, these things are great. And so now I have gin and sodas with LaCroix in it. And it's totally like, I even saw my mom over the weekend. She came in town to hang with us and see my son play baseball and whatever. But I had to tell her, I was like, I'm a full on LaCroix guy now. It's embarrassing, Mom.
So you and I are about the same age. You're a couple years older than I am. I didn't even know what LaCroix was until I was in my 20s. So yeah. I'm just learning right now as we record this that it was around when we were kids. I had no idea.
So I think they've like anything, they've diversified on flavors, and they now have like Essence LaCroix and whatever. Like I think my mom had the orange or the lemon. But yeah, I agree. Had she not had them, I obviously wouldn't have known they were a thing. Nor would I have known that then we would have 6 flavors in our break room on each floor at our firm. And oh man, if they run out of a flavor, people are super disappointed, like.
We don't have many LaCroix drinkers here. I was going to be really good. Whenever I host the show, I try to, like, it's not show magic, right? Like if it says we're drinking a Moscow Mule, I'm drinking a Moscow Mule, right? Shout out to Kristen Trailer at Relativity. So when you were like, yeah, it's going to be gin and LaCroix, I was like, okay. Or you said gin and soda. I was like, what kind of soda? And you said LaCroix. I said, all right, perfect. And then as we discussed off camera, you and I have been buddies for a couple years. So I did exactly no preparation for this, including I did not run down the block to the Whole Foods. But the LaCroix of choice at Proteus is bubbly. So I've got great bubbly going on. And I was very nervous about it until I took a sip, and it's worked out. This might be a thing. So is gin your year-round drink, or is that like the crisp, refreshing summertime drink?
I feel like it's the summertime drink, right?
Yeah. It's got to be darker. As the days get shorter, the alcohol has to get darker.
Exactly. I was going to say that exact thing. Well put. Better than I would have. And frankly, the bubbly one is pretty good. A cousin of it, which is even nicer, are the Spindrifts. Have you
Oh yeah. My wife
those
is
are
obsessed with Spindrifts.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we alluded, I know you. We've known each other for a couple of years. We pal around when I'm in Chicago from time to time, see each other on the road at the conference circuit. But I'm sure many of our esteemed listeners and eDiscovery friends in the interwebs may not know who you are. So shall we introduce them? Shall we do some couple of questions here to get the flavor of who Chris Bojar is?
Sure, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. First concert.
So but I feel great about hanging my concert posters behind me now. I mean, I think I
Did
said
you
to
really
people
do that
before,
just for this episode?
it was the nudge I needed. So I've had these around, and I haven't had them put on my wall, but here they are for those watching the video version. So this weekend I did that first concert that at least that I went to with my buddy, without our parents, whatever. Went to Horde Fest, where the lineup was Ziggy Marley to open. Dave Matthews was next, and it was a big deal that John Popper came out and played with Dave Matthews because that was right before Dave Matthews kind of took off. Then Blues Traveler played, and then the sort of like headliner was Black Crows.
God, what a lineup.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so that one was great. I think it was 95. And John Popper actually played on a side stage with another band, and I don't remember the name of them, but it was like 7 of us hanging out with John Popper. And so, yeah, that one was talk about one of your first concerts to go with. My buddy I grew up with around the corner, Mike Assert, and I went, and man, we came home from that concert, and we were, I don't know, barely in high school, like took the the bus downtown to go to Summerfest because I grew up in Milwaukee, and got back from that show, and we're like just buzzing about it for weeks, like for really, just like, man, and of course you look back nostalgically at any of these things, but I think it's held up over time too.
That's an unbelievable lineup, especially in the mid 90s for sure.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to put a pin in that. I might come back with some follow-up questions. All right, that was your first concert. Favorite concert?
So weirdly, I might have even said that one, which is odd to say, but over my shoulder here, these are all Phish posters.
Yes.
So I'm a big Phish fan, or, of the band, and Trey, and, I think that's a Trey band one in the corner below in Chicago. But the one right here is actually from New Year's. And I don't know, do you know much about Phish or no?
I do know a little bit about Phish. I know enough that when you said that Dave Matthews, I was like, well, we see Phish and Trey Anastasio over your shoulder. So now I have to ask, are you part of the culture wars that if you like Phish, you're not allowed to like Dave, or vice versa?
So it's funny, I haven't seen Dave in probably 20 years. And my wife and I went to a Dave Matthews show last summer at Northerly Island, which is kind of a cool venue in Chicago. It's a real pain to get in and out of, but
yeah,
had not
terrible
been
to
in
get
like
in and
20
out
years.
But right
Yeah.
right on Lake Michigan.
Yeah, so cool. In fact, we had a Phish show rained out there. That it doesn't matter. I can tell you another time. But she was at a Sheryl Crow concert, and it didn't get rained out at Ravinia. So she's like, Phish doesn't play, but Sheryl Crow plays. And I was like, okay, we were basically in Lake Michigan, and there was lightning. Like, that isn't fair. But no. Long story short, we went to Dave Matthews over the summer and totally enjoyed it. I think that was a real nostalgia play. Like, I hadn't seen him in 20 years, whereas I try to catch Phish whenever I can.
How many times have you seen Phish live?
So this is like, it feels like it'll be a big number, but it's also kind of embarrassing to say because it's a small number in the Phish crew. I'm on my Leroy Butler number 36 times, which is like not a ton actually if you're a Phish fan. But yeah,
I've seen them once at the LA Forum.
Oh wow!
And it was cool, and I appreciated the experience. But I'm a Dave Matthews guy.
Okay.
And like, I appreciate Phish for what they are, but all right, they can stay. It is what it is, I suppose. But yeah. We've just named Northerly Island, Ravinia, and LA Forum 3 wildly different venues, all very cool. If anybody is a music fan out there and you have a chance to see an an act that you are mildly interested in, those 3 venues are solid ones to check out for sure.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And in fact, in terms of a solid venue to check out, the answer to your question, as always, we meander to get to your what you wanted. I actually saw Phish over New Year's at MSG for the first time.
Ooh.
And we went because my buddy turned 40. So we went to the December 30th show, and they played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So he turned 40 on Saturday. And of course, he was like, all right, well, if we're going to go out for, we might as well at least go to at least the New Year's show. And so we went to the Friday show as well. So we didn't catch the Thursday show. But then Sunday, the short version of it is that Trey wrote a senior thesis called Gamehenge. And that's what a lot of their songs are based around. And they ended up playing Gamehenge over 2 sets and like explaining sort of Gamehenge. So it's like an all-timer. Like this is like, if you're a Phish fan, all your dreams have come true. And like, what can they do next? So it was funny, even in the intro to the show, Trey said, oh, we played her 83 times over 40 years. And, went over the whole thing. And so they did they had different animal, I think the pictures in the bottom here, you can't quite see it, but they had characters out there. I mean, it was a total to-do. And one of those things that I'm like, man, I feel like I've won the lottery here, Phish style. So
wild. Very cool. All right. We'll come back to music here in a little bit. Proceeding with by the way, Mike Birbiglia is a comedian. I listen to a lot of comedy podcasts. Mike Birbiglia, he doesn't give the pretense of a lightning round. Like Larry King was like the king of the lightning round, right?
Yeah.
He'd be like, where'd you grow up? Did your mother breastfeed you or bottle feed you? And he was just very like this, just the staccato, no context, no backstory. Mike Birbiglia is the opposite. He doesn't even, he calls it the slow round because he knows the whole point is much like this. There's going to be long diatribes and bits and jokes that come up. So thank you for your patience as we work very slowly through this lightning round. Favorite vacation spot?
Favorite vacation spot. My wife, Katie, and I did went to South America right before we had kids. And so we did 3 countries, which was like great. So we did Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. And we actually, why I'd say that's a favorite one other than, it's like memorable and logistics kind of great in South America, meaning you have to travel a long way, but it's the same time zone. So
yes,
while you're, tired from traveling and whatever. And then 2, they have, we went to Iguazu Falls, which kind of makes Niagara Falls look like a bathtub. Like it's just crazy, the scale of it. And I kind of think, I think you alluded to this on one of your previous podcasts about this, where, there's the kind of like touristy stuff that you want to do because it's touristy, right? Yeah. And that's why you go to these places. So in fact, even in Chicago, sometimes we like don't do Chicago stuff and you're like, well, we live here. Like we should enjoy the touristy things.
Right.
So
it's funny, right? It's like
that.
When you live in Chicago, it's like, yeah, my kids have never been to the top of the Sears Tower, Willis Tower, whatever it's called now. They've never been to the Ferris wheel at Navy Pier. It's like, why would we do that? That's what out-of-towners do. But yeah, but it's like, well, those things became iconic for a reason. So you kind of want to check the box.
Yeah. So you have to go check the box. So, I mean, going to Rio and seeing like, Christ the Redeemer, super cool. And, so mixed in with some also just seeing different things and places and going to 3 countries in that short a time. I think it was like a little less than 2 weeks, but just a great trip.
Yeah, super cool. Dang, very cool. Most used app on your phone?
So I think this one just jumped up recently. I didn't want to do the like Outlook or text message, right? Like I feel like that's the one that that's the actual answer, but it's like, that's not cool.
I teased Dave Hancock and Ray Biederman about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Outlook. It's all Outlook because I'm just working all the time. No, it's actually the Euchre app that I downloaded.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah. So you can either play single or multiplayer. I've not played the multiplayer one. I don't know. Do you have to I'd have to text you and be like, hey, Ryan, we're going to hop on. Are your kids in bed? Are my kids in bed? Are we playing Euchre on our phones? Actually, yeah, I play that a little bit on we moved to the suburbs, so we now live in Downers Grove. We moved out here about a year ago, where I'm actually recording today. I'd like to say that I'd put this in my office downtown, but I think this might be a little frowned upon, even though I think our firm's pretty relaxed. I think maybe this might be too much.
I think you'd get away with it because I'm in our office right now and everybody thinks I'm like Don Draper over here.
with the booze in the background. Yeah, that's nice. But yeah, no, I actually play euchre on the train. Like maybe I'll listen to a podcast or whatever, and it seems like it's mindless. Are you a card guy?
Oh, I'm a euchre guy. I never really got into like poker was the big thing, right? It kind of had its moment when we were in like middle school, high school age.
Yep.
And I could just never get into it because I am too social and I don't have, I suppose, a poker face, right? Like I wear my heart on my sleeve in a certain sense. So that game never really lent itself to my personality. But euchre, for those of you listening who don't know what euchre is, it is like super heavy Midwest United States card game. Basically, heavily concentrated in like Indiana, Michigan, a little bit of Wisconsin. And then you have like random people from like a small pocket of Connecticut who know how to play. But it's a super fun game that you typically play in pairs, and it is amazing, and you should all look it up. What is this app that you downloaded, Chris?
Yeah, so I can just play euchre on my phone. So I mean, this again maybe feels like
what's the app called?
Yeah, I think it's just the euchre app. I'll have to look it up while we're.
I'm gonna have to get like an affiliate deal when they have a bunch of e-discoverers who are waiting for a production QC and they're just sitting there killing time. Download.
Yeah. It looks like it's called Euchre 3D, and I would pay for I use it so much which is sort of embarrassing to say, that I would pay for some version of it without ads. But it's weird. It'll just kick in and either knock out the music or podcast I'm listening to because the ad pops into like the top banner ad.
Brutal. No.
So I might need, although I have my stats of how much I've played so far. So now I'm like, do I get rid of the euchre app or do I go to a new one? All these definitely first world problems when that's what you're worried about. But it's funny you say the pocket of Wisconsin, because my dad is a big sheep's head player, and I actually don't know sheep's head that well, which I think they're kind of cousins of each other, right? So
I don't know sheep's head that well. I know it enough to know that they're related, but I don't know how.
Yeah.
Same thing with bridge. My Nana is 92 years old. God bless her. I better do the math before this airs. She might get mad. Yeah, she just turned 92. And she says that euchre is for people who aren't smart enough to play bridge. It's like, well, okay, fair.
Hand up. That's me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. All right. Last question on this piece, and then we'll move on to greener pastures. But you mentioned listening to podcasts on the train, playing euchre. What do you listen to aside from eDiscovery After Hours?
Yeah, I mean that's my number one podcast, obviously.
The number one podcast that has no set structure or episode length or publishing schedule, but I appreciate the fandom.
Yeah. Hey, you gotta keep people guessing, that's why they are interested. So I have a pretty eclectic mix. I mean, I listen to a bunch of Wisconsin sports related podcasts because I'm a big cheesehead sports fan. I listen to a bunch of golf podcasts, which frankly, I almost think I have too many. And I recently went through like a little bit of unsubscribing to some podcasts, which I felt really bad about because I do feel like, super committed that people are putting out this content, like all kidding aside. I mean, there's work that goes into it and, there's administrative stuff and, but it was sort of painful to get rid of them. And then I listen to some kind of current events podcasts. And then one podcaster I listen to a lot, and he's on different formats, but do you know Professor Galloway? Have you listened to any of his stuff?
Yeah, I've been listening to a lot of him lately. He's a entrepreneur, investor, adjunct professor at NYU. And have you listened to the algebra of what's it called? The algebra of happiness or algebra of wealth or something, where he's talking about like Gen Z and how the cards are stacked against them. Have you been hearing that lately? Like that
Yeah, in fact,
stuff he's putting
I
out?
subscribe to his he has a section class, so I started taking some AI different classes from him. Or well, I guess professors that they have, but he did his Algebra of Wealth, which is his most recent book. Yeah, and it's really I mean the stats are like a little bit scary, right? I mean, not that we should, not look at them and understand what's going on, but what I do appreciate from him is that there's an attorney at our firm that says, let's not let perfect be the enemy of good, which I think is, a cliche, but also helpful. And so I think what Professor Galloway's getting at with some of the stuff is, you just need to get started, right? Like there needs to be some positive momentum in a direction, right? And it can apply to anything, right? There's stuff, I mean, whatever, maybe I wish I worked out more, right? I just need to start moving, right? And whenever I talk about this with my wife, she's like, or you could just start doing that stuff, right? Like that's part of it, is that I think just in that direction. And he seems to get good guests on his different platforms and kind of talk through things.
Yeah,
it gives
I,
something to
I
think about.
love. He is. He's just not. There's no such thing as a sacred cow for him. Like he'll say anything to anybody, right?
Yep.
So yeah, if you have young children around, or if some of the language is NSFW, but super interesting guy. And I don't agree with everything he says, but super intelligent and interesting guy. So very, very cool that you're on that train. All right, Chris, you mentioned you grew up in Milwaukee. You ended up going to undergrad at Carnegie Mellon, and you played soccer in undergrad, right?
For a couple years, yeah.
So did you were you a multi-sport athlete as a kid? Did soccer occupy your entire childhood? How did you end up playing collegiate soccer?
Well, I think thanks mostly to my mom. There were very few sports that I could play because of my height. So
you're 6'3", right?
yeah, depending on how you count, yeah. No, I played a bunch of sports when I was a kid, but yeah, I think I coalesced around soccer. And so I actually, it's kind of a random story of how we looked at it. My mom worked for a university that unfortunately just recently closed its doors in Wisconsin, but she had a tuition remission program at different schools around the country. So when we would go to soccer tournaments, we would look at schools, and it was like, I think about this now with my kids. I mean, I have a son, Aaron, who's about to turn 10, and a daughter, Audrey, who just turned 7. And, it's closer than you would think, right? I mean, you don't want to plan that far. Well, I guess you want to plan, but it's like, oh, wow, we're actually going to start doing that with them. But we were looking at colleges, and we actually looked in Pittsburgh at Duquesne, and that was the school that they had tuition remission at. And as I was researching it, it was like, well, you should look at Carnegie Mellon, and they had actually a technology program that was interesting to me. So it came down to Wisconsin or Carnegie Mellon, and I ended up going to Carnegie Mellon, obviously.
Yeah, two just absolute trash lower tier schools, just terrible. If you have Google, you know how untrue that statement is, but we state school people have to throw in some digs every once in a while. So yeah, I mean, obviously a great school, and being a full-time athlete, my sister was a scholarship athlete as well. So I see the dedication that took. And you brought up your kids. Is pursuing athletics to the point of scholarship level and playing in school, is that something that you would encourage them to do or discourage them to do, or you say, hey, live and let live and choose your own path? Because for those of us who are not full-time athletes in school, it's very hard to relate unless you have a close friend or a sibling who was one, right? Because it's a different college experience.
Yeah, for sure. I oddly think I got better grades during the seasons than I did out of season, because I think it was one of those things you just kind of had only a certain amount of time to do things, and you kind of had to fit it in. And we played a home and away schedule, but I mean, it was a pretty neat conference. Like we played, I don't know, Wash U, U of Chicago. So meaning we went to cities that were not, it wasn't just like bus trips. Like we flew. So we would do like a Tuesday through Sunday trip where we might play 2 or 3 games, around the country. So you kind of had to, have better time management than your, I think, average college student. And so I think that part was good. whether my kids want to play sports as long as they want to, honestly, I'm whatever makes them happy. And I know that's like super easy to say as a parent. And maybe it's like, oh, we got to do that. But even let's use my son playing baseball as an example. He's on a team this year where we just moved out here. He's making new friends. They haven't won a ton of games. I think it's like maybe a little bit humbling to them because they're like, wait, we've wanted this stuff all the time. And so I think that's like sort of good. And I want to say that I'm not the crazy parent, but like we had a doubleheader yesterday and the ump had a couple rough calls. And of course I'm just like trying to cover up my mouth. And I'm like, maybe it's because I had played enough that I try to let it sort of go.
Yeah.
But yeah, once your kids start doing it, it's a different flavor. Because have your kids started in on the sports stuff yet, or they haven't gotten to that stage?
So my oldest is 8, and
Okay.
I've got 3 girls and then a boy who's 2 and then another girl. And so the oldest 2 are 8 and 6. I cannot get them interested in anything other than ballet and tap, which is great. And I'll do the dance dad thing and go to the recitals, and they look adorable, and that's all great. But I've pitched t-ball, I've pitched soccer, I pitched a few different things, and just cannot get them into it. So now we're gonna go the country club route. I'm gonna see if I'm gonna get a little junior golf set and
Cool.
just chip in the backyard and see if they take to that. Maybe I can get them in there. By the way, for those who are watching this on YouTube, there's a very specific logo on your shirt. Can you explain what that is, and have you played there?
Well, I can answer the logo is the Masters. Unfortunately, I've not played there. No, I think the odds of me playing at Augusta National are almost zero. But
You just have to befriend Condoleeza Rice and get the invite. It's not that hard.
funny you should say that. I actually met Condoleezza Rice at Augusta National.
Oh, so oftentimes I ask people who's the most famous celebrity you've met. I think we know your answer now.
Well, you tell me. I had someone queued up for this. I think I have someone slightly, maybe not. I don't know. The quick story though is my buddy, who was, I like to say, was best man in my wife Katie's wedding, which our wedding, and I was in his wedding. His company has Masters tickets via their CEO, and so he called me on. So I've been to the Masters once, hence the shirt. I went in 2014 when Bubba won his second Masters,
Yep.
and he called me on a Friday and was like, "Hey, if you can get down to Augusta, we have Berkman's passes for Augusta National for Sunday if you want to go." And so I, obviously got on a plane and figured it out, and it was, truly the best sporting experience of my life. Like it's like one of those things that's like cliche, kind of embarrassing. Not embarrassing is not the right word, but like it's like, oh, this is like the best comedy you've ever seen, and it lives up to the hype. If you're into golf, right? I'm into golf, so that was great. The reason why I said I got to meet Condoleezza Rice is that Berkman's place, to show you how wild things are at Augusta National, is only open the week of the Masters. And so they have it on site, and it's like all you can eat, drink, whatever. And they have replica greens of 3 of Augusta National's greens. And you just go out there and you get to putt on them with Augusta caddies reading it. And so we're walking in, and of course it's just like people wear their green jackets if they belong. And so Condoleezza Rice was there welcoming people and saying, welcome to Berkman's place. And of course we like go up, and so we got to putt on Tiger's like famous chip in line on 16. Unfortunately, none of us made it, but it was like, we're walking around, and it's funny because you'd appreciate this of having kids. So my buddy that took us, he's the youngest of 3 brothers. And so he took one of our other friends and then his brothers and me. And when we finished the day, we had to walk across the entire property, which we were taking our sweet time. And normally we're kind of in a hurry to go places, but it's like, look, this is probably the only time we're going to get here. We're going to take our time. And I kind of turned to them jokingly and was like, your little brother sure hooked you guys up, huh? And of course they had to like begrudgingly say, thank you, Mark, for getting me out here and giving us like just a crazy
experience of a lifetime, man. It's so cool. It's so cool.
Have you been to Augusta or no?
No, I haven't, but it's one of those bucket list things that I've looked for an excuse to go, and every year I get hit up. there's, that we do a lot of work in sports associations, sports leagues, etc. at Proteus, and so we get all the brokers that hit us up. It's like the people who are selling to the Fortune 250s of the world. They're like, hey,
Right.
if you want to pay us $80,000, we can get you and 4 guests into this VIP Masters weekend.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, like it's so tempting. It's so tempting to pull the trigger, but that's so much money. Like
Yeah.
that can be redeployed into so many other areas that my operations team would kill me if I was spending money like that. And I don't blame them. Those people work crazy hours and do a good job. And how can I spend all this company money going to check off my bucket list item while they're like, yeah, I sure would like another team member. It's like, well, I'm going to take that. And it's so, yeah. So
No, understood. And I think that's the part where I feel like just a little hesitant about saying like, oh yeah, it's like the best sporting thing I've ever done. Where I talk about going to like this Berkman's Place thing. It's like, it's awesome. And I totally fell into it via a friend, right? But it is like one of those things where it's like, man, but not being with your phone the entire day, like it truly is like, it teaches you, and again, I don't practice it in my real life, but like it is one of those things where it seems like, oh, how can I go all day without my phone? And then it's like, oh, you know what? I remember like absolutely every minute of that day. Like, you know what I mean? There's no interruptions. I mean, other than talking with the people that you're with. I mean, we had like a kind of a snafu of like, how do we meet each other? Because we had 2 groups of people. And it was funny because it was like, oh, I like, now I feel like I'm back at the Hortfest concert, right? Like it's 1995 again, where like, I'm like, you have to coordinate that ahead of time, and you're not just going to text the whole time about where you're going. And, so
it's
awesome.
so funny you bring that up. And it's so true because like I went to see a comedy show. Bill Burr was in town recently, and I went with a couple of buddies to see him. And the Yonder pouches, the magnetically controlled little pouch where they drop your phone in and you cannot access it. And it was so freeing, and it's so nice because it doesn't matter if you're at a live concert, if you're at if you're at a sporting event, if you're with your kids or wherever, me anyway, I'm basically addicted to this thing. And it's like every 10 to 15 minutes, I'm checking my email, I'm checking Teams, I'm checking stupid stuff that I don't need to check. And it's so funny. My wife the other day was like I don't know if it was Friends or it was some big sitcom from the 90s. And she was like staring so intently. And I was like, what are you doing? And she goes, none of them have phones. Nobody's looking at their phones. They're all living life. They're talking to each other. And it was kind of this like gut punch of like, man, I got to be better at putting this thing away and like living life with my wife and children. Because I don't want our kids are now to the age where they're going to remember dad staring at this stupid rectangle. You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
Totally. And I think every cliche of like a dad who has, kids, or mom who has kids that likes to golf, they're like, oh, and I just golf, right? I will say the thing I like the most about golfing or using that experience of Augusta is that I do put my phone away and I like track my stats on a app and whatever, and I enjoy that, but like I actually don't like riding in carts. I hate saying that because I think a lot of people do, and that's fine, but I just truly like walking with 3 other people, and like we just get to do what we're doing right now, right? And it's like so enjoyable, and it's honestly there's some good golf that I've like either turned down or like not done because I was like, you know what, I don't think I'm gonna enjoy that, and I don't say that as like a humble brag or anything. Like honestly, just the like being able to get out and like walk with people that you really want to see, or frankly looking forward to like seeing your friends, like now that we've moved to the burbs and we don't live as close to some of the other people, like I truly do cherish that time. And to your point, like I need to bring that home more often. So by putting this down in the recording, and my wife Katie may or may not listen to this, I'm kind of putting myself on notice.
We're gonna clip it and we'll tag her.
Yeah. And she's gonna say like, oh man, this is he doesn't practice what he preaches, but we'll check in a year or something and we'll do that. But
we'll check in on episode 100 and we'll see how you're doing.
we'll see if I'm doing good. So you tell me on for the famous person. Sorry to hijack this. I had thought about who I would say, and the famous person I was going to say was Tom Hanks. So who do you think's more famous, Tom Hanks or Condoleeza Rice?
Oh man. Well, Tom Hanks has to be
Yeah.
because global, right? But like for a subset of people, anybody political, most people in the legal world, I shouldn't say most, a lot of people in the legal world would probably rather meet Condi, who, by the way, is like crazy charming and just in another league of humanity than anyone I will ever populate. But Tom Hanks, I mean, come on. Wow. How did you meet Tom Hanks?
So totally dumb luck it's funny, I hadn't been back to Second City in a long time, but I met him outside of Second City. And one of my good
what is Second
buddies,
City for people who've never been to Chicago? What is that?
Oh, so Second City is an improv group, and they've kind of, a lot of the people that are in Second City, there's a ton of famous alums. Like who do you think would be the most famous Second City alum?
Tina Fey, Stephen Colbert from the Canada market. It was Martin Short, John Belushi went through there. I mean, I could go deep on Second City because I'm a big comedy nerd. But I mean, anybody and everybody, they either went through Second City or this thing called IO, which is Improv Olympic, or the Groundlings out in LA.
Yeah.
But yeah, Second City is like comedy royalty.
And honestly, again, of the, hey, this is a touristy thing to do in Chicago. Okay, so people that don't like laughing, don't go to Second City, okay? People that enjoy chuckling at all, go to Second City. It'll be great. My buddy's wife is actually in the cast this year, so we got to go and see her. And it was really neat, it was funny, obviously, but just to see your friend's wife doing that, right, with a group of your friends. But we were going to go to Second City to tell the Tom Hanks story. We were going to go to Second City, and there's a bar across the street from Second City. And so we're going to meet my friends there. And all of a sudden I get out of the cab. So it kind of dates it, right? It wasn't an Uber. And all of a sudden the like side door pops open and you see like 3 or 4 people kind of walking out with 2 other people that look super familiar. But you know how you're trying to place people and think like, oh, I would expect to see this person here. Yeah. Obviously, I was not expecting to see Tom Hanks. So Tom Hanks comes walking out with his wife. It's Rita Wilson. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. And so they're trying to usher him into like a car, and the car's not there. And you can see like the staff like, oh no, what do we do? And of course, there's like some people milling about. There's not a lot of people because they took him out a side door. But of course, like the worst group for Tom Hanks to show up is like 3 people, like, maybe women in like their 50s or something, and so they're like, oh my God, it's Tom Hanks. And so he turns and I go, oh my God, it's Tom Hanks. And he's like, oh my God, I'm Tom Hanks. So he handled it really well. So we were all chuckling. His wife kind of like goes to the side, and of course they want to take a picture. And so I was like, okay, I'd love to take a picture. So I take a picture. And he's like, okay. And the funny thing is, I didn't think, being glued to my phone, I didn't think to take out my phone to take a picture with Tom Hanks. But I appreciate this story or remember it so much because we just totally ended up talking. So he came over after taking the picture, and he's waiting for the car. We talked for, what was probably 30 seconds or a minute, but felt like, an hour, right?
Yeah.
And so my friends are waiting in the bar, and so I'm about to go across the street. His car shows up. Well, they're just sitting in traffic. And so he like rolls down the window, and I forget if I said it or he said it, but it was something like, oh my God, it's Tom Hanks. And, and he wasn't moving. Right. Yeah. So like our interaction continued for, again, what probably was only a minute or 2 longer, but it was like one of those things where we totally just got such a kick out of, or I got a kick out of it. He was a good sport about it, but yeah, that's my celebrity encounter.
I don't know if there's ever been a better way to end an episode than with a happy Tom Hanks story. So for that, I thank you. And cheers. Chris, thanks for coming on the show, man.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.